and how frequently I want this information sent to the user. So you'll see that I can send the information to a user ID or an email address. If it goes to a user ID, then the information's populated in that home screen, whereas I can also send an email, and you'll see here a list of attached customers have been placed on hold, and then those customers are listed. So like a lot of times we do get questions like, how do I know when I'm getting to a certain threshold on information? And this business alerts, again, the system comes with about 10 or 15 standard alerts, but you can go ahead and create your own as well. Now, one of the pluses for these alerts is that people can build them themselves. As long as they're trained on how to build them, they'll be able to do that. Now, these reminders, like here I have payables due today, past due customer transactions. If I click on the past due customer transactions, you'll see I'm in an interface that's called Smart Lists. Now, when I had stopped Bill from going further in SL, SL has something called Quick Query, and in GP we have something called Smart List. Now, what Smart Lists are is the ability to inquire on information from a user perspective, and the term is that it's more of an ad hoc report. So it's gathering data based on criteria that you give the system. So you'll see here that to the left I've got those groupings that we saw in the Wonderbar area. We have financial information, sales information, and purchasing is what I'm going to focus on right now. And
one of the things I found in SmartLink, we use that, it can only be on current data. Can you do that in historical data?
I'm not sure why it's not on historical.
It is not. And we'll try, and we'll work with the MR, and they have not been able to.
I mean, you probably don't have Smart List Builder. If you had Smart List Builder, you could tap into that older data if you wanted to, because then you can create your own smart list. Okay. All right. So what happens here then is that you'll see under my purchasing group, I have payables transactions, which are things like vendors' invoices. We have purchase order information and vendor information. So let's say that I'm in an audit, and the auditor says that I want to see all invoices over $7,000 that you paid for this year. So there are reports in GP for things like a vendor trial balance or a list of payables transactions, but it doesn't give you the option to say, I only want to see items over $7,000. So this tool gives you the capability to do that. So if I go into payables transactions, what it's going to do is that there's a default set of data that comes up when I go into payables transactions. So you'll see that I've got voucher number, vendor ID, my document type or invoices and payments, dates, document numbers, and amounts. So I can come in here and you'll see that I have just 48 items. This is a test database. And you can limit the items that are presented to you, because as you go on over time, you don't want to bring everything up because then it's too much data. So once I'm in here, I can sort on any column. So if I wanted to sort by voucher number or sort by vendor ID, I can go ahead and do that, or by document type, and it'll sort the data for me. But what'll happen is a lot of times from that default, people want to change the information. So we have something here called columns, and let's say we wanted to see the vendor name on top of the vendor ID. So under the columns area, if I click on add, this is a list of pretty much, I'm going to use the term all, but I'm sure it's not all 100%, but most of the payables fields. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to select the vendor name, and I'm going to add that to my list. Okay, so let's see, vendor name, right down here, okay. And I can determine where in the list I want this to show up. I'm going to have it right after the vendor ID. And instead of the term document number, I want to see the term invoice number instead. Okay, all right. So I click OK, and you'll see that the data refreshes with the vendor name and then I have the term invoice number instead of document number. And now I can sort by vendor name if I wanted to as well. Now on top of that, normally you just don't want to see all your data. You want to see data selected for either a certain period of time or, in my case, a numeric threshold. So here I'm going to say select when the document amount is greater than, in my case, 7,000. Something. Transaction amount is not equal to, okay, greater than, I knew there was a problem. All right, so now instead of 48 items, we have 3 items here, okay? And once we get those 3 items, we can then, besides send the data to Excel, we can also drill down on that information. So if I drill down on this invoice, okay, what we're gonna see here is basically what we saw before, which is I can look at the distribution for this payables. I can see that it was posted as an asset account, this computer's asset account, and I can see that there haven't been any other payments. Now additional, very similar to SL, there is an attachment capability. So you'll see I have this notes area, and you'll see this throughout the system. And you can either have text put in here, or if I click on the paperclip, what we're going to see is a link back to the vendor's invoice. Okay, so it's updating a link back to the document. So what I'm able to do then is I can go ahead. I'll stop this, and then I could come in and see that vendor's invoice. Now, you can either attach the image at the point you're making the data entry, or you can go ahead and, okay, so that's just a sample of the item that was attached. It's the original invoice. And then we also have tools that allow you to scan the items at the time you're entering.
Any integration with SharePoint for storing invoices?
Yeah, with SL, the SharePoint integration's built into the product. With GP, there's a module that you need to get, and then you could link items that are stored within a SharePoint site back within your GP, you know, as you're entering the vendors, invoices, customer information, and things like that. But yeah.
And that's the module that comes from Microsoft or a third-party vendor?
It's a third-party vendor. Yeah, like I said, for SL, it's already built in there for GP. They're going to change that in the next version, actually, to have it read directly off of a SharePoint site, but right now in the current version. But they are looking to change, I know that they're looking to change that within the next version, which is coming out toward the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so with these, with the smart list, what happens here then is that you can save this as a favorite if you plan on using it again. And I'm just going to call this over 7,000. And you can decide who can see this information. And you can decide that if you add it as a favorite, it winds up just getting listed over here. But if you say, excuse me, favorite and reminder, then it goes onto your front home page as a more of an alert to let you know what elements are in this particular selection criteria. So, so we have something here, payables due today. That's something, again, I'm picking something that's not, has no data, but you'll say it's select when the due date's today, and then that's what's showing up on my home page within GP. Now, Smart Lists have been within GP, I think, for a couple of versions now of the software, and we ultimately get the question then, okay, that's great, but once I send my data to Excel, the data is stagnant, okay? So what they've developed is something called Excel reports, okay? And what that is it's taking the standard smart lists that come with the system, and they've created Excel reports with that. So it's really just taking a view that's in the database of the data. So this is containing similar information to what I just had in my smart list, and it's sending that data in Excel. So the data is actually hot linked, okay? So it's going against a view in the database, so it's not just being dumped to Excel. And then from there, a lot of times people will set up like pivot tables from this information or charts. And there is also a capability, if you're a GP user, to drill down on data from the Excel spreadsheet into GP. Okay, so they've made the data more real time. So as the information changes within GP, these spreadsheets will be updated.
Is this version still can you still use FRX with it, or is it?
If you're a current user, you can. If you're a brand new user, you need to use Management Reporter, which we're going to get into soon. Okay. All right. So that's SmartList and Excel reports, and as I mentioned earlier, there's something called SmartList Builder that will allow you to modify both of those reports. I'm just going to touch briefly on the account structure, because I do think that that's always important when you're dealing with setting up a system. What happens with GP is that everything is kept within this account format, and you can have up to 10 segments within your account format with a total length of 66 characters. I haven't yet had a client with quite 66 characters, but it's there. And what happens here, just as Lee had mentioned in his presentation, a lot of times when we set this up with people, we talk about what kind of reports you need, and then from there, we have to make sure that we can track that information within the accounting system. So this is the account format set up, and with everyone we work with, this is slightly different. So here I'm tracking the account, fund, location, and department, and then what we have to do is for each segment to go in and define the valid values for each segment. Because this then is used with the report writers, as well as when you're building a chart of accounts, it takes these descriptions to try to auto-create the account description for you. Now, on top of the account number, GP also has something called analytical accounting, and analytical accounting allows you to add extra dimensions within the system. So you'll see here that I can add dimensions like events. I'm tracking grants and programs here. We can also track